Yep. They're putting an Ashley meta, aka unveiling new harvest. I think GGG really fucked up. Because, like, it's just very inconsistent mentality for them. So basically, the reason why they nerfed Harvest and why they nerfed Talisman was because people were reaching power levels of characters that they weren't comfortable with, right? And I think that's sensible. That's totally fair. That's how they explained it, and I think there's absolute. I mean, I agree with it. I think people's characters were too strong. The game was getting a little bit out of hand. Sure, makes sense. But then they absolutely like giga over nerfed the ever living fuck out of Harvest without giving any indication at all in the manifesto that it's going to be to this extent. Like, they even say that the ratios are going to be the same, and it's like, yeah, no, they're not. Like, it's just not true what they wrote. Just extra frustrating, because now you have all these people who are talking about Harvest who are like, we told you, we called it. No, you fucking didn't. They did something different than what they said they're going to do in the manifesto. But whatever, besides the point, okay? So they do that, and yet they create this system that is more RNG and more annoying, that essentially ends up being the same way crafting has been in Path of Exile for the longest time. Not deterministic in almost any way. It's just pure randomness. And characters are stronger than ever. Like, they're by far the strongest they could have ever been, because unveiling is completely fucking crazy. So now the top end of items, if you take the time to actually generate them, is so much higher than it's ever been in the history of Path of Exile. So, like, what was the point of this? You're hurting the average player and preventing them from having, like, an on average enjoyable experience for the eventual, maybe potential possibility that they're going to hit some, like, crazy ass unveil and one of their items is going to be good. It's like, why would you, like, how does this follow? So you're trying to, like, nerf the top end of players while simultaneously giving them by far more power than they ever could have had, ever. Like, that just doesn't make sense. You're hurting the average player, you're only buffing, like, the top end, and you're overall just making it more RNG. It just doesn't make sense. But, like, if you disregard the illogic in all of that, I mean, the unveiling system's kind of cool. Because I say that it's not as RNG as just the Chaos Orb, right? Like, it is a much lower pool to take into account, and it's much more handleable, but simultaneously the cost is much greater, which makes it even more gated of a crafting system for, like, anybody else outside of, like, you know, the real 1%. So it's like, I don't. It just doesn't logically follow. It just doesn't logically follow. Especially since you nerf talismans to then introduce exactly why you nerf talismans, so that you wouldn't have this, like, huge power surge between the average talisman and then, like, the ultimate talisman. And that's exactly what veiled items are. They're the exact same system that you were unhappy with, and you're making the exact same mistake. It's like, I don't know, dude. It just makes no sense to me. I'm fine with changes that I personally disagree with. And, you know, I understand that everything that I think could be good for the game isn't always good for the game, and sometimes it's even detrimental. So I'm a lot of the times just completely fine with GGG doing something that I disagree with, because there's logic in it. I can see the other perspective. I can see what they were going for. In this case, it's just contradictory. It's objectively contradictory. And so, yeah, I don't know. I hope they look into it, and I hope they make it up in some other way, because I don't know, the game's in a weird state right now. I'm convinced they make changes to just shake up the meta. Oh yeah, balance changes they just do to shake up the meta. But this wasn't like a balancing thing, you know? I don't know. Maybe the logic is if they don't have, like, if players on average don't have access to these crazy items, that they won't realize that they exist, and therefore they don't have a problem with it. Yeah, I think that's probably their logic. That it's like, oh, if the players don't know that it exists, then it's not an issue if it isn't widely available. Well, with Harvest, it was just available to everybody at all times, and the overall character level of everybody went up too much for them to be comfortable with. Well, now the overall power level of everybody got brought down, but then the select few that play the game the most, their power level went up by more than ever in PoE. It's like, I don't know if that's like a fun way to make your game work, especially considering that the way PoE is right now is the game doesn't work at all until you've obtained all this crazy ass shit that takes forever to get to, like all this you know, all the fucking watchstones, all the passives, you get all to all the bosses, you farm up all the bases. It takes forever to get to a point where you're actually building a character. At least on SSF. I mean, on Trade League, I think people get to play their characters, but they don't actually get to play the game. Where they feel like constantly they have something to do that isn't just gameplay. It's constantly like looking at your passives, looking at your watchstones, figuring out when you're fighting the next boss for what and where. It's like a constant plan that you have to have. And I don't know, maybe that's good. That's the point of video games, right? To keep it like distracting, keep people distracted. But I'm not a huge fan of it. And it also hurts me a lot because it hurts SSF, I think, more than ever. SSF was in a really good state, I feel, last league. Harvest needed a nerf, but outside of that, I think it was in the best state that it's ever been. Because undoubtedly, Path of Exile's endgame takes long enough right now, okay? Like, they don't need more shit in PoE. It takes long enough. So then, I think it would be just a good idea to just make it more comfortable for like newer and average players. I don't think increasing their power while simultaneously decreasing the power of like people who play this game probably way too much would be a bad thing. I think making that gap smaller would be an overall benefit from the game for the game. And also, realistically, if you target like the people who play the most, nobody's gonna give a fuck, right? Like GGG, a lot of times they react due to backlash. Nobody's gonna complain about this. We'll just play more. Yeah, I don't know. For me, I play this game for a living and I feel like it's too much. Like this league, I was just having fun, right? I was just playing the game. I wasn't like gunning for anything, or I wasn't focusing on progressing my overall state, or trying to like acquire currency or generate builds. I just wanted to play the game. And it really made me realize that, like, yeah, you know, I was running like some 14s plus, mostly early reds, and like a bunch of yellows, right? That's basically what's been my, like, what I've been doing this league for the first, yeah, for like the first 2 weeks, I'd say. Because now we're what, week 4? So yeah, like the first 2 weeks. Dude, I got nothing done. Like nothing. If I truly only feel satisfaction when my Atlas, when my passives, and when my like bases and conquerors are done, that shit takes so long. Like a ridiculously long amount of time. And I think it's fine for that system to take a long time. I think it should be more brainless than it is. I think conquerors were fine. I think Maven introduced so much micromanagement when it comes to mapping that it really gets in the way of just playing the video game. Like just putting in maps, Alken going. Like, I think, I don't know, to me that's the joy of Path of Exile. And I think this system directly contradicts it. But maybe, you know, Actually, my girlfriend's a good example of that. She started playing PoE, right? Because I'm playing it. And she's like an absolute Norman. Like, she doesn't play games at all. And, yeah, the other day she came in and she was like, I'm in Act 4. And I just don't know if I want to keep playing. Because all I do is read non-stop. I'm just reading. And I think that's fine if you're starting in the game, because PoE is really complicated, right? But if that's your end game as well, outside of just like figuring out your build, that you're just like figuring out the game for fucking 10 hours a day every day for months, like that's not, I don't think that's okay. She's not the target audience at all. Yeah, for sure. But I think you can have both, right? You can have the target audience for that, and you can also have the people who would have satisfaction early on. No, you can't? Absolutely you can, Viro. These target audience someone who can play 20 plus hours a week. No. How can you do that? You create systems that make players feel satisfaction prior to the end game. Those systems exist in the game. It's called the campaign. Okay? It's existed in Path of Exile forever. There was racing around it. People used to love the campaign. The campaign was the game. But now the end game is so bloated that the campaign seems like a chore, seems like just effort to get to the end game. The same way it did in games like WoW. You know, where in classic WoW, you level and people are like, whoa, all you do is quest in this game? Yeah, that's the game. It's enjoyable. That's the fun. That's the reward. Okay? And then you get to the end game and then there's more. But to then limit it to the point where the early game is unenjoyable because the end game is so bloated, I think that's just flawed. Because yeah, everybody hates the campaign now, but it used to not be like that. I really like it, and I think GGG likes it. That's why they're building Path of Exile 2 not around this like grand revamp of the entire game. They're introducing PoE 2 as another campaign. Because in their eyes, that's where the satisfaction of the players could come from. Right? So how can you say, if they're releasing an entire thing, how can you not say that the people playing the campaign would not be the target audience? It can be. It seems like a chore because we've played the game for 10 years. No, it's the opposite. Well, maybe it feels like a chore to you, Viro. I love the campaign. I like it more than anything. But I think a big part of that is the fact that I've been playing the game so long and the campaign used to be a part of the game, while now it's like a fucking 60-hour tutorial, you know? The target audience is people that have played a long time. I don't think you're hearing what I'm saying. That's completely fine. I'm just saying that by making players feel good earlier on in the game outside of the end game, by putting literally any time and effort into it, which they haven't done since like Act 10 got released, they can make players feel better, right? So that they don't feel like, oh, all I gotta do is get to the end game. Oh, all I gotta do is get to yellow maps. Oh, all I gotta do is get to red maps. All I gotta do is get this item. All I gotta do is get that item. Oh, all I gotta do is kill this boss, and then I'll have fun playing the game. Because that's how people feel right now, and that's not okay. Because you never get there. You never get there. Like, you will, if you think this next thing, this next map, your last map of the day, or this next boss is going to give you the feeling of I've accomplished something in Path of Exile, it will never happen. That doesn't happen. Unless you're enjoying getting there, you're not going to be happy. It will never happen. You'll always want more. It's the same way people think, oh, when I start earning $1,000 a month, I'll be happy. And then they get to the $1,000 and now they're like, oh, I want 10,000. And then I want 100,000. And then I want more and more and more and more. They're never happy because they don't enjoy the journey. They hate that shit. So they end up being miserable. It's fucked, dude. It's fucked. That's why I think that they're making PoE 2 the way they are. Like, because they want people to feel that satisfaction earlier. I don't know if it's gonna help. I'm not saying that it's like objectively good or objectively bad. I'm just saying that creating a system where you captivate the player base earlier is just beneficial. Like, I absolutely agree that the target audience for Path of Exile is people who play the game a lot and for a long time. Absolutely.